Hey guys, and welcome to what was going to be a fairly short video taking a look at the recent Ash rework and what the changes have done to the frame. Ash has been one of those frames, it's been on the block for changing for quite a while now, mostly because of its fourth ability, Bladestorm. The old Bladestorm, you would just hit 4, you would enter the cinematic camera, wait for the ability to end, then press 4 again. Ash became the ultimate example of a frame that just became press 4 to win, so it was inevitable that it was going to change eventually. The final straw for the push to get these changes done came during the index, where Ash's Bladestorm spammers, they were tying up the entire enemy units with clones, and before the rework happened, any enemy with Ash or one of his clones on was completely invincible to the rest of your team. So as soon as Ash Bladestorm, every single unit in that event became untouchable to everyone except Ash. Clearly, things did need to change. So, Ash became the latest frame to get some quality of life changes and a rework to Bladestorm. So what exactly were those changes? Nothing was actually done to Shuriken, which I know that people wanted a quality of life change for because it's a purely damage ability. However, because of the guaranteed slash procs that Shuriken has, combined with Ash's passive, it's quite possibly the strongest damage based first ability of any frame. A single Shuriken cast takes down level 50 heavy gunners with the right build very easily in a single cast. So from that perspective, it's actually pretty fantastic. However, at higher level, it doesn't have that much in the way of crowd control, which is what carries you at those levels, but I think it's still a very solid ability nonetheless. Smokescreen got a huge quality of life boost. Previously, you had to be on the ground when you casted the smokescreen. However, now you can cast smokescreen while doing just about anything. If you're in the air, if you're sprinting, reloading, firing, no matter what, you can cast it now, and that is a fantastic quality of life change. Allows you to bullet jump towards a group of enemies, smokescreen mid-air, drop down in the middle of them, slaughter them all with your melee. It's a change that's been badly needed for a very long time now, and one that many Ash players will absolutely love. Teleport also got a quality of life change. Previously, you could only teleport to friendlies or enemies, and that was about it. And it was very restricting. However, now you can teleport to anything with a health bar, grates, fans, breakable chests, the list goes on and on. It's a very decent little change. Hasn't necessarily made the ability any less restrictive, however, it's a nice little addition to the ability. And then we have Bladestorm. Now, the biggest change and naturally the most contentious. So now, instead of pressing 4, put your feet up, you press 4 to enter mark mode. When you move your cursor over a target, you place 1 mark on them, costing 15 energy per mark. The mark cost is reduced to 10 if you're cloaked with smokescreen, plus reduced further with the use of efficiency mods. Each enemy can be marked up to 3 times. Now, the build I'll show you later is going to be 3 energy per marks while cloaked, and 4.5 while not cloaked. Now, the previous Bladestorm that had a limit of 18 targets, however, now you can carry on marking until you are out of energy. Things like Generic, Energy Pads or Energy Siphon are not disabled when you're in mark mode, plus marks never disappear. When you have finished marking targets or out of energy, if you hit 4 again, you will go back to the old cinematic animation thing and Bladestorm the enemies. Marked enemies that die before you Bladestorm them get the energy refunded to you, so you won't lose out on energy if things die before you get a Bladestorm off. On the topic of teammates killing things, enemies with clones on them are no longer invincible. In addition to all of this, all enemies that die to Bladestorm will have their corpses dissolved, so that means enemies will not be alerted by corpses, although he does not get stealth experience multipliers for Bladestorm targets, so it's not going to be your next focus farming frame. Bladestorm also has a 50 meter base range. You are going to need to not hit your range too hard when modding, otherwise you might have problems trying to mark targets that are far away. So, what do I think of the changes to Ash? Well, to be honest, the changes to Bladestorm, because let's be honest, you can't really complain about the changes to the first 3 abilities, because they're all additions to it, to be honest, or don't have any at all in the case of Shuriken. I personally wish that the range of the Smoke Shadow augment would have been buffed a bit, because it's such a small range right now, it makes the augment almost entirely useless. I don't think it's worth a slot at all, so I'd love to have seen a bit of a buff to that. I wouldn't have minded a small amount of crowd control from Shuriken either. Maybe the enemy does an animation like they're trying to stem the bleed that's coming from that bleed proc, for example. that lasted a few seconds, just to give it a little bit of extra scaling potential, because obviously it's got that little bit of crowd control built in. Smokescreen, I think, is fine. People are used to using duration as the stat to dump on their Bladestorm builds, but if you build with duration in mind, you can get a huge amount of use out of it, especially since you can get stealth multipliers while cloaked. Okay, the duration isn't as good as Loki, but that doesn't inherently make it bad. I use duration a lot. The build I use, and the build I'm going to show, is balanced around using Smokescreen as your hit points. If used smartly, it's a very strong build. But Bladestorm, this is obviously going to be the biggest change. It's the biggest bone of contention for some people, and I'm going to say this now, I prefer the new one. I'm sorry, but the old Bladestorm, for me, was one of the worst designed and laziest abilities in Warframe. For 25 energy, killing 18 targets, no matter where they were, as long as they were in range, with a single energy orb being enough to keep it going, making enemies invincible for teammates, it was a hateful ability, and has needed changing for a long time. Yes, it was efficient, but the thing is, efficiency is very rarely fun, and that's coming from someone that chases efficiency. The Endo farm on Earth that I showed a while ago, it was efficient, but the gameplay wasn't really that fun. And Bladestorm used to be exactly the same way. I'm sorry, but the largest complaint back in the day was that you couldn't type in chat while Bladestorming. If that is the biggest problem someone's got with it, you know you've got a problem with that ability. Right now, the control you have over your targets that you select has made Bladestorm is more of a precision tool, rather than the most random one you could find. In the old Bladestorm, you got 18 random targets. If the high value targets you wanted to take down weren't included in that 18, well, you were pretty much out of luck. Plus, if those 18 targets were in range of an ancient healer, for example, all of your damage was completely absorbed. Now, with the new system, you can just mark the healer, take him down, then mark the rest of the units around you once you've taken down the ancient. Or you could just shoot the healer and mark the rest of the units. You have far more control over your Bladestorm than you ever used to. It feels way more ninja than you used to. Random targeting of just about everything in range is about as far from ninja as you can get. But the one thing people have underestimated is the change to affect invincible units and what that effect that had on your own team. What this has done is that he's given the effect of giving Ashe a load of crowd control. Every single post I've seen about the Ashe changes have completely missed this. Enemies with clones on their head flail around, and in the past that wouldn't be any help to your team because, okay, they're not shooting at them, but they couldn't damage them. Now, however, a target that's being attacked by Ashe or his clone will flail around and your team can take advantage of that and help to kill the target. Especially if that target's one that's a high threat. Techs, bombards, heavy gunners, even ancients, that sort of thing. It's given Ashe a new level of team play that he simply didn't have before. No, Bladestorm isn't technically as efficient as it was before. Yes, it can be pretty energy heavy, but with a good build and a bit of specialisation into focus trees, you've got Zenuric for example, I'm even running Arcane Energize now, even that can be mitigated. I do understand that some people wish the cinematic killing had gone away, especially since that was one of the points of the rework in the first place. It was a highly requested idea that Ashe, instead of joining his clones, he just sends out his clones to kill and he just carries on what he was doing. Shooting, bullet jumping around, doing whatever. Honestly, if this is paired with the current marking mechanic, that would actually be pretty cool, since then Ashe could take advantage of the crowd control caused by his own clones. Maybe that could come as an augment or something, since there actually are quite a few people that seem to like the cinematics. Now, in terms of the build I was actually using for the footage, I was building duration with a better power strength. I've got energy siphon on here right now. I know a lot of people are going to go for seal charge, but with Ashe farms in the past, corrosive projection was mandatory to make them work, which is why I've got the dash polarity on there. Then I've got a maxed arrow-minded, prime continuity and constitution for duration, as well as the knockdown recovery that comes from constitution. We've got prime flow to keep our energy levels up, especially since I'm combining this with both Zenuric and Arcane Energize. Streamline and a 2 from the top fleeting. I go with the 2 for the top for extra duration, although I do lose 5% efficiency, but that sort of balances out in my eyes. And then we've got stretch and cunning drift to try and counter the range loss from narrow-minded. Now, I found this build very, very effective, but it doesn't allow for much in the way of screwing up. If you screw up, you do die fairly often, especially at higher level. However, this build is a high risk, high reward build. I have been the top of every lobby I've been in since the Ash update, combining normal melee with Bladestorm, so the potential to do well is still there if you are a decent player. You just have to work a bit harder for it now. And of course, you've still got Fatal Teleport Ash. That's still a thing if you want to go for that instead. That's an option as well. As for the Rogue skin, holy crap, this thing looks amazing. I love the way this thing looks. I tried to give it a go colouring it. This is what happens when a colourblind guy tries to fashion frame. All the colours are from the fire pack. I tried to make it colourful without it being too neon bright. I quite like how it turned out, to be honest. Maybe you guys can critique me in the comments below. Also, let me know what your thoughts on the Ash changes are now you've had a couple of days to actually test things. There's been a lot said by those that are jumping on the bandwagon without really testing things, so I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. As always though, feel free to hit that like button to sub if you like my content, and I shall see you in the next video.